So, the polls have been all over the place. You have some polls that show Warren in second place. You have a lot of polls showing Bernie in second place. You have a poll that came out yesterday that shows Bernie has taken the lead in New Hampshire over Biden and Warren. So I'm not putting like a crazy amount of stock in the polls just yet, because frankly, I think when you've seen enough polls and you read their methodology, you know which polling companies are going to be better for Warren. You know which polls are going to be better for Bernie. You know which polls are going to be really, really bad for Bernie, because the more you look into who they're polling, you see, oh, this one's polling a lot of people over the age of 50. Oh, this one's polling a more even distribution. Oh, this one's polling way more people that make over $50,000 a year. Of course, the corporate media never reports that context. They just make it seem like, oh, it's all fair and Bernie's getting creamed. But I'm looking less at the polls, and I'm looking more at the crowds. I saw a piece today that said, take it from Hillary Clinton, who told you all her defenders said crowd size doesn't matter. Well, is she president? Because I actually think crowd size does matter. Donald Trump had huge crowds, and he's now president. Hillary Clinton didn't, and she had way less people come out in terms of African Americans, Latinos, and young people, and that's why she's not president. So let's remind you, this is what the media calls a gaffe. After we play this, I'm going to remind you why these are not actually gaffes. Here we go.
We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts.
And the other thing we should do is we should challenge these students. We should challenge students in these schools to have advanced placement programs in these schools. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
If you agree with me, go to Joe 30330. You should be able to, if you cross the border, that they have to wait in line. And it's not one that, in fact...
Thank you, Mr.
So Joe Biden is not having gaffes. Gaffes are what, people foot in their mouth disease, right? You say things that you should say in private, but you say it in public, right? Joe Biden is clearly having issues processing thoughts. He's having issues, completing sentences. He's having issues remembering things. It is clearly, and reporters who pretend otherwise are frankly irresponsible, it is clearly some form of cognitive decline. I also think it's irresponsible to play internet doctor, so that's why we are not diagnosing Joe Biden. I'm not a doctor, and I don't like Joe Biden. I don't like his policies. I think he'd be a bad president, but I don't wish him poor health, and I don't think you guys should either. Let's not be crazy. However, it's very evident if you watch with 2 eyes and common sense, he's struggling. He's not as sharp as he used to be, which happens. It happens when you get older. If you look at Bernie Sanders, for example, it hasn't quite happened to him yet. I'm not saying that as a Bernie supporter. I'm just saying he's frankly more lucid if you watch him. But the reason that the corporate media keeps pretending that these are gaffes, the reason that the corporate media keeps pretending these are gaffes is because they don't want to lose access. Because how presidential campaigns is the more gaffe, the more you actually challenge the candidates, especially the top candidates. It's like carrot and a stick. That campaign will start blocking you from interviews. They'll stop talking to you. They'll make it harder for you to get into rallies and things like that. And access is, most of these corporate journalists, oxygen. So now we've seen all these stumbles. We've seen all of these stumbles from after 2 mass shootings, saying the wrong cities. He said Houston and Detroit were where these, Houston and Michigan were where these mass shootings were. You see him forgetting that he said, I remember talking to those Parkland students when I was vice president. Parkland happened 2 years later. Parkland students did not go to the White House when Joe Biden was president. He obviously made that comment about, poor kids, equating poor kids and white kids, equating poor kids with black kids, saying all poor kids are black. Bottom line, I think his campaign knows, and that's why you've seen him off the campaign trail so much. If they put Joe Biden in a grueling, in the normal, rigid schedule that Bernie Sanders has been on for months, that Elizabeth Warren has been on for months, that Kamala Harris has been on for months, that, Mayor Pete has been on for months. If you put him from city to city, 6-7 days a week, nonstop, it's going to be, it's a time bomb waiting to explode, because he's either too old and can't go at that pace, which is fine. We're not mocking being older. When you're older, you get tired. I mean, that's just a part of life. Or there is something cognitively going on where he's declining, and they know the more they put him on stage, the more they put him in front of people, the more problems there's going to be. So let's read this article, because apparently now the idea, oh my God, this is like Hillary Clinton deja vu. Now the idea is basically to hide Joe Biden as much as humanly possible from the voters. This is from The Hill. Biden allies, meaning the Democratic Party establishment, float scaling back events to limit, quote, gaffes. We've already established these are not gaffes. These are the makings of somebody who's in cognitive decline. The Hill is reporting, and by the way, how this works, so you know the behind the scenes. Basically, when Democratic Party insiders, when corporate Democratic Party people, when consultants, when donors want to get a message to the candidate, they do it through The Hill, they do it through Politico, they do it through CNN. This is called floating a trial balloon. They don't want to say it directly to his face. They don't want to say it directly to his campaign advisors, so they're doing it through the media. Allies to Joe Biden have been floating the idea of altering the former vice president's schedule in an effort to reduce the gaffes he has made in recent days. So you keep hearing gaffes when it's so clear these are not gaffes. These are somebody who's struggling to remember things. It's somebody who's struggling just to finish sentences. He's cutting himself off during debates when no one is telling him your time is up. He did it in the first debate and he did it in the second debate. This would be like me right now being like, thanks for watching. Well, I've been going for an hour, but like, thanks for watching, bye. Like, you do a little bit of a farewell tour, So,
you have to go for an hour. I don't even see that.
Yeah, the allies growing increasingly nervous about Biden's verbal flubs have said it's an approach that's been suggested to campaign officials on the heels of the former vice president's stumbles. Biden has a tendency to make the blunders late in the day. Oh my God. Late in the day, his allies say, particularly after a long swing on the road, like he had last week in Iowa. Hold up, I can't read anymore. So, I'm not trying to mock Joe Biden, but when they're saying, oh, he should, come off the campaign trail, and oh, we noticed that this happens later in the day. Yeah, gaffes happen later in the day? No. What happens later in the day when you're older and are cognitively not as sharp is you stutter your words. You lose your train of thought. You're ready to go to bed. I'm not mocking him. This is reality. This is what happens when you get older. This is why, and in fairness, put aside the fact that it's Joe Biden and I don't like him, I kind of feel for the guy. He's older. He's 76. It's a grueling thing to crisscross the country. I mean, most of the time when he's crisscrossing the country, it's not for rallies. It's to go kiss the ring of Wall Street bankers and oil executives and pharmaceutical executives and Comcast lobbyists to get $2,800 checks. But that's still, crisscross flights. So,
I was going to say, just to kind of like staple that, like you even got mad at me for like making mocking him a little bit. He was like, no, like we're not trying to do that. We're trying to show like this is a serious decline and it's irresponsible. He got even a little mad at me that how I did the edit was almost kind of seemed like it was mocking. So I just want to say that to let them know that you really aren't, like you're really being sincere when you say that.
I'm saying this for two reasons. Number one, because like genuinely speaking, why would you put this guy, why is he putting himself through this? But number two, because I know what's going to happen. I remember I remember November 6th or 8th, 2016.
November 8th.
Yeah, the presidential election. I remember seeing all these cosmopolitan, cocktail crowd, arrogant, out of touch, elitist journalists sitting on the set of CNN, and frankly, the Young Turks, if we're keeping it real, being like,
didn't Jake did say
being like, How did this happen? How did this happen? And just
Jay predicted it though.
No, he didn't.
He did on MSNBC. He said that Trump will win by the amount he won. I swear to God, I watched it like 6 times. He did on MSN. He was tripping the night that it happened, but he said, I predict Trump win by this amount. And I remember the amount he said was the exact electoral votes that Trump won by.
But the point is, why we're saying this is, if the Democratic Party is sincere, and I don't think they are, I do not think they are, about getting rid of Donald Trump, you're literally talking about dragging this man, not to the finish line, just to the general election. They are talking about dragging, frankly, an older politician who is not cognitively sharp. And that's being kind. I'm just saying not cognitively sharp. If you look at it, it looks worse than that. You're talking about taking him off the campaign trail. If you notice, and I said this to Jen the other day, I have never seen a candidate's wife this early travel as much as Jill Biden is for Joe Biden. Jill Biden is traveling all to city after city after city, and a lot of the time she's doing it are on days that Joe Biden is not. To me, this comes off like they are papering over Joe Biden and basically trying for dear life to stretch this thing out for as long as possible until it's really noticeable that something is wrong. And why that is so dangerous? Remember how Donald Trump first took off in the Republican primary when no one said he had a chance by ravaging and beating to death low energy Jeb Bush. Remember that? Jeb Bush is a tool and a warmonger and all that, but he embarrassed and shamed and defamed Jeb Bush, low energy Bush. I mean, my God, Donald Trump, I could see on the debate stage saying, senile Joe, 6 feet under Joe. I could see all these things.
Just something hella disrespectful.
Right. But why this is so dangerous, when you have the Democratic Party establishment, and let's go back to the article, Biden has a tendency to make blunders late in the day, his allies say. When older people need to go to sleep. Particularly after a long swing on the road, like he had last week in Iowa. They say something needs to be done to give the candidate more downtime as the campaign intensifies in the fall. Quote, he needs to be a strong force on the campaign trail, but he also has to pace himself, said one ally who has talked to members of the campaign team and had others in the broader Biden world about how to move forward. The ally said it was unclear whether the campaign would make any changes to Biden's schedule, particularly because Biden was criticized recently for not doing as many events as his Democratic rivals. Quote, I think you'll see the same schedule and maybe even more Joe Biden. Oh boy. Everyone wants to see Joe Biden be Joe Biden. If he's held back in any way, that's almost the antithesis of who he is. I think it's the wrong approach. You got more quotes. A lot of people are nervous that he's lost some of his mojo. They're getting nervous about him going toe-to-toe with Trump. Basically, this is all very PG-rated versions of saying this guy is not well. That's what this all is. And when I say not well, I'm not saying there's anything severe. I'm not saying there's anything life or, a death sentence. But frankly, and I'm only saying Bernie Sanders because he's the only one to compare Biden to. He's 77 and Biden's 76. I mean, Mother Nature catches up for everyone differently. Bernie Sanders is all over the frickin' country. Bernie Sanders, his campaign is tweeting him out, shooting hoops at arcades, throwing baseballs with his campaign manager. He's going, he's been to, I know he's crisscrossed to California several times. He's been to Iowa many times, New Hampshire, South Carolina. He's also gone to states like, and by the way, this isn't only during the campaign. If you've been following, since he lost in 2016, he's been traveling. So obviously, putting aside like whether you like Bernie, whether you like Biden, whatever, obviously in terms of stamina, Bernie Sanders has it at the moment. Biden does not. And the thing that troubles me, forget Trump for a second. I agree. It's very important to take out Trump. If he's this tired, if he's this like losing the mojo At 76, what are we in August? So 15 months before the general election? How's he going to be in 18 months on Inauguration Day? How's he going to be as President of the United States? We know that Ronald Reagan became president, and other than destroying the unions, offshoring the jobs, you know, the welfare queens, the deregulation, the tax cuts for the wealthy, I mean, he was pretty much sleeping the last 4 or 5 years. He had early onset dementia. Did you want to say something?
I was going to say, if this was Bernie, MSNBC, everybody would be on him. He looks frail. He looks like he's not there. He looks like he's 2 steps behind. He looks like he's drained. That would like occupy every news like segment, period. But for some reason, no one talks about it. He had somebody on CNN the other day saying, oh, they're saying like it's not bothering him. Joe Biden is doing what? What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? But it's just crazy. I think it's so weird that people are allowing this to go on. That's how selfish they are. The Democratic Party will always be that way because it's never been about the people. It's only about what they can get out of their time in office.
So here's the, I don't know what to say other than, like, I don't think we have the graphic. Iceberg right ahead. Because, you know, CNN, don't think that there's not, corporate media they're very frustrating, but they're not stupid. They're not stupid. So if you haven't noticed, CNN and MSNBC have been propping up Elizabeth Warren. You know, hell, she's as high as the 2 figures on top of a wedding cake. The way they're going with Elizabeth Warren. From CNN, like blocking Bernie Sanders supporters from even entering the cheering area at the Detroit debate. Their cameras were showing all these nice Warren signs, and then they parked Bernie Sanders supporters literally behind a mega logo so you couldn't see them. You have MSNBC has literally shown polls saying Elizabeth Warren has taken the lead over Bernie Sanders, when the poll on screen, when they say that, has them tied. I mean, it's example after example, because it's all about a narrative. And at my heart, I do think what they're trying to do is to, as quickly as they can, make Bernie Sanders, you know, knock him down in the polls, make it seem like he has no shot, just like they did in 2016, combining superdelegates with pledge delegates and all these things. But at the end of the day, they are trying to prop up other candidates because they think it's not clear if Biden's going to make it to the finish line. And to tell you the truth, as somebody, again, I'm not diagnosing anyone, but I do know people with cognitive issues. Joe Biden, when you see him get frustrated, when you see him say, "Oh, my time is up," you know, on the debate stage, when you see these things, and there's the Titanic that Colin made for us, that is a sign of somebody frustrated. Because when people who used to be very sharp, when people have, you know, used to have great zingers, when people used to be able to, you know, have some, you know, some real zest, pep in their step, when they're just not capable anymore, they forget things, they lose their train of thought, it's frustrating. This is a sign of aging. And to me, I think this is really, really dangerous because at the same time as Trump is becoming more and more dangerous every day, the quote-unquote front runner for the Democratic Party is literally now, it's being signaled that we need to drag him for dear life just to get him to the finish line. Not only would that re-elect Donald Trump, it would be probably, not that I care about the strength of the Democratic Party, but it might cripple the Democratic Party. If you nominate this guy who they are now saying, oh, you know, we notice he gets a little more tired during night events. What are you supposed to have events at 9 in the morning and bring all the Starbucks espresso shots you can for this guy? It's crazy. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.